So in this segment, we're going to be talking about Rishi Sunak aiming for the top job and essentially going to put his name in the hat to be Prime Minister soon. So I don't know if that means he's going to shiv Boris Johnson, or if he knows Boris Johnson's favourability is very low and the party might end up shivving him, or Boris Johnson might leave because he's broke. Who knows? But number 10 refused to deny that Boris Johnson threatened to demote the Chancellor, so he was going to put him as the Health Secretary. So Boris Johnson has full confidence in Sunak, his spokesperson has said, but he would not deny the Prime Minister threatened to demote his Chancellor. So you can see a massive rift opening between these two, who seemed fairly close. I mean, Sunak was brought in to be essentially a puppet of... what's that dude's name, man? Dominic Cummings. But I guess Sunak, the puppet has come to life, essentially. The puppet maker wished hard enough, and Sunak's a real boy. All reports of tensions, the number 10 spokesperson said, the Prime Minister and Chancellor have always enjoyed a close and effective working relationship and will continue to do so. The thing is, Sunak's very popular because of the furlough scheme and because of the eat out to help out nonsense. Boris Johnson's very unpopular because he's seen as the guy who's always messing around and not doing the lockdowns and then going into lockdown and blah blah blah. So Johnson did not deny that he floated the idea of demoting Sunak to Health Secretary after a letter from the Chancellor calling for COVID travel restrictions to be lifted was leaked last week. And so what happened was Sunak leaked a letter saying that he wants the COVID travel restrictions to be ceased, essentially, or to be lowered. And Sunak's doing that to appeal to more middle-class people and upper working-class people who are going on holiday but then find they have to be isolated for 10 days. So poll, bear with me. So Sunak, Britons want Sunak as Boris Johnson struggles. New poll, major support for the Chancellor to replace the Prime Minister when he leaves office. The question is, when is that going to happen? Almost half the Tories think a change of Prime Minister should take place within the next 12 months. And if that does happen, that will most likely trigger a general election where Sunak needs legitimacy in the general election. So that most likely, if Boris Johnson does get shivved, it will trigger a general election once the Tory leadership thing has been done. So even the Mail are backing Sunak by the looks of things, which is interesting. Tory MPs also back Sunak after the threat to sack him. So Tory MPs have lined up to back Sunak as the defender of fiscal conservatism after Boris Johnson's threat to sack him, because these Tories really believe in austerity because they don't actually understand economics. As Treasury Secretary sources pushed back against the idea of the carbon tax, number 10 insisted the Prime Minister had full confidence in Sunak, but his spokesperson did not deny Johnson had threatened to demote the Chancellor to Health Secretary amid a row about a leaked letter. So Boris Johnson's very annoyed about this leaked letter because it looks like Sunak has outflanked him, made him look a bit stupid, especially since it was leaked. Johnson was rumoured to be considering a reshuffle in the autumn, although his spokesperson would say there were no imminent plans for a shake-up, and getting rid of Sunak now would be a dumb idea, considering that, as I think Phil pointed out, that Sunak is incredibly popular, and once the furlough scheme starts coming to an end, the Chancellor will be very unpopular. So making this move now is very not great. Sunak is backed by the fiscally conservative, uneducated on economics wing of the Conservatives, and is popular with the party members who view him as committed to keeping tight control of day-to-day spending. A lot of these guys, especially in the south, they're not happy about money being spent in the north. They don't like it. They see it as their money being spent on northerners. There are several areas of tension between number 10 and number 11, Downing Street, but the biggest unresolved areas of spending are how to reach the government's net zero target and fund a new social care system, with both policies being delayed until autumn because Boris Johnson has no idea. And this gives space for Sunak to basically outflank Boris Johnson on the right by not pushing for a carbon tax and not pushing for higher taxes on a new social care system that we desperately need. And the arguments that the UK economy is, doing great is pretty redundant or not doing that great. So the people who argue austerity is a good idea, it's fairly stagnant. Our percentage of debt to GDP is fairly high compared to Germany, a country that I think spends far more. And if you look at our growth, annual change, it's been very stagnant under the era of austerity, not to mention the amount of poverty and things like that have gone up. So we've done austerity, the debt is still pretty high. The debt to GDP, I mean, and that's because the GDP isn't growing very much because of austerity and the government's stupidity, and obviously Brexit as well. I guess that would factor into it. So Sunak takes glamorous wife to the cricket. So there's a further quote from him where Sunak is the Tory favourite to replace Boris Johnson, but declined 3 times in an interview to say if he harbours ambition for the top job. So when a politician won't answer that question, One sec. What that means is they're going to do it. They want the top job. They refuse to deny it, because if they deny that he wants to be prime minister, when he eventually runs to be prime minister, they'll be like, "Oh, you said you weren't good. You didn't want the role, and now suddenly you do." That's why you don't answer a question like that. Because if you say, "Yes, I do want to be prime minister," you undermine the guy in charge now, and he could get rid of you. So you just wait. Essentially, you just don't answer the question, because either way, it's a bad answer. Unless you say, "Oh, once Boris Johnson goes, I'll think about it, because I do kind of want that role." But even if you do that, it still puts pressure on Johnson to go. Relations between the Chancellor and the PM are said to be strained. Johnson threatening to demote him, blah, blah, blah. More than half the Tory voters want the finance chief. See how they're framing that. Not, Dishy Rishi or the guy who's going to implement massive austerity on the country. The finance chief, making him look competent. The framing there. When he leaves number 10, the Mail has received on Wednesday. So you can see that the Daily Mail have put out 2 articles essentially backing Sunak for the top job. And you can see the kind of rift is opening, Sunak eyeing up Johnson, get a guy who looks at you like the way Sunak looks at Johnson's pretty funny, to be fair. But in terms of, Sunak, it's clear his goal is to be Prime Minister. And I think if Boris Johnson's opinion polls are still very low, or if Boris Johnson's very low in the opinion polls, I think he'll shiv him. Metaphorically speaking, obviously. Similar to what Gove did in 2016. But yeah, and we know Boris Johnson's run out of peas. But anyways, I want to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Please, not Sunak. He's much smarter than Johnson. Oh. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.